I'm Deanna,
And I'm Grace.
and this is The Flow Up, a podcast about deconstructing, dissecting, and disentangling reality from myth for all things health and wellness.
Today, we're introducing ourselves the best way we know how by sharing our first period stories. We'll take you back to the moments that started it all and contextualize those experiences with our current menstrual health climate. We are also releasing this episode on Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is May 28th. So we thought this topic was appropriate.
So, some of you may have similar stories or may find parts of these experiences similar to your own if you ever menstruated or currently menstruate. While story time is always fun, we want to dig a little deeper and unearth the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions and misperceptions that shaped our first periods and stamped us with unforgettable memories that have continued to guide our passion for menstrual health and wellness to this day.
So buckle in, grab a snack, or put on your walking shoes and hit the road. Here comes episode 1. Thanks for listening in.
Okay, let's get started. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
So let's kick it off. How old were you when you first got your period?
Okay, so I don't remember exactly how old I was. I do remember being in either sixth or seventh grade.
Mhm.
So I think around like age 10 to 12. Um, but I didn't have like a full-blown period at first. So I vividly remember it was 4th of July. And in our town, we would do like a 4th of July parade, like the town would put on a parade. And so my family would go every year. And I remember waking up that morning and I just for some reason like looked in my underwear. I used to like, I don't know if you did this, but I would like look at my discharge because I was like, what is this? And I
Curious.
remember looking and there was like a little bit of red in it. And I thought to myself, oh my God, is this a period? Um, and so I took it to my mom and she like closely inspected it. She like really put her face close to it. And really like, took it all in. And she goes, yeah, that I think that you're having your period. So the only menstrual products we had were these like huge maxi pads. And so I'm sure a lot of people that menstruate when they're, in middle school, they don't want people to know that they have like a huge
Mhm.
pad on. So I had this huge pad on. I was so self-conscious that you could see it through the back. Um, and I didn't bleed on it at all. So it was like I had a little bit of discharge, like red discharge. And I think my body was like getting ready. Um, but I think maybe my body was like, oh, you're really anxious about this right now. So we're actually going to take it back and we're not going to we're going to make you wear this maxi pad all day, but you're not going to bleed on it.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think I started to have bleeding maybe like 6 months to a year after that. Um, yeah, so I think that is kind of like the first time I ever had any type of menstrual blood.
Mhm.
So how old were you? Were you like the same age or?
Yeah. So actually, I was. So I kind of remember vividly. I remember exact date. It was July
Wow.
2nd. It's my half birthday.
Wait,
So
so we like had our periods almost on the same day.
yes, very similar. I was 13 and a half exactly. And yeah, I remember my friends had, most of them had gotten it before me. So I was a little bit older. And I remember waking up on that morning. I was playing all star like softball at the time, which,
Mm.
if you see me now, I'm not sure I would scream like all played all star softball. It was in middle school. So I remember having a game on the day before that. And I just had like, I remember myself in the dugout, like doubled over in intense, like lower back pain, not cramps in my stomach, but low back pain. And I was like, what the heck is this? I am very uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
Played the game, did it all. It was fine, went home, nothing happened, went to bed. And then, yeah, in the morning, went to the bathroom, kind of came downstairs. Um, I was very surprised to see what was in my underwear. I don't remember like a ton of blood or like a crime scene kind of thing, but it was there for sure. Um, and I had done a lot of like probably most kids do who are interested in menstruation and periods. I did a lot of reading. I had the American Girl, the Care and Keeping of You books.
Mm-hmm.
My friends and I played with like tampons and wore pads as like a test run for fun. It was like a very I was so curious about it, but it was also like top secret. Like we didn't let our parents see us like reading about it or playing with it, playing with those things. So when it happened, I remember running to my mom who was still asleep. It was definitely like the weekend it was summer break, I guess. Um, and I told her that I think I had my period, and she, I think, did something that is a little stereotypical in some ways and kind of like express this awe of me becoming a quote unquote woman and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
entering the world of womanhood. And I was like, okay, that's enough. And I was like totally, I like closed off completely and like left.
Yeah, it's kind of, it feels like a lot and it's like
Yeah.
almost embarrassing.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
put on the spot. I felt
Mhm.
very like, I don't even want to talk to you right now, mom. Like that was not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember like just, using I remember so badly wanting to use tampons like right away, but she sort of encouraged me not to, which was good. I used pads. And then my period was really never regular after that. It
Mhm.
was super sporadic and very heavy at times and light at other times. And it was just sort of an overall weird period situation for me. I also just remember not being super stoked about it at all. Like, I didn't
Mhm.
feel this excitement. I didn't feel like this is what I've been waiting for. Now I have it. All of my friends and I now have it. It was very sort of like it fell flat. Um,
Yeah.
so it was very odd. I'm thinking back to your experience and how your mom like got up in the
Yeah, like I think and I'm thinking back like my mom is very like I don't think she did the very stereotypical thing of like you're becoming a
Mm,
woman. She was just
yeah.
very much like okay, you are clearly having your period. This is what
Mhm.
we do when you have your period and very like relaxed about it, which I think was very helpful for me because I naturally get very nervous and I was like
Yeah.
what's going on? Like, this has never happened before. I think this is a period.
Yeah.
So I think that was very helpful, but I know so many people and I think there's a lot of discussion for young people who menstruate. It's like
Mhm.
you're becoming they usually say a woman, but
Yeah.
like you're becoming a woman, you're an adult now. And it's like no, no, no. I'm like 12.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that you say that your period was irregular. Mine for a long time was also irregular.
Yeah.
I have a very clear image of I would bleed for like months, like
Oh.
consistently and like heavy. Like, and I only used pads. I don't know if you felt this way, but I
Mhm.
felt very much like I was the last one to use tampons. And so I felt
Oh.
like, oh, I'm the last one. I almost felt like judged for not using tampons yet, which in retrospect probably wasn't what happened, but it was like, oh, I'm still a baby because I use pads. But
Mhm.
anyway, so I remember like just consistently having to change pads all the time. And I think I actually went to an OBGYN when I was like 13
Yes.
to like figure it out. And
Yeah.
I think their response was like, well, you're kind of too young to be on the pill. Like, let's see if it kind of figures itself out.
Mhm.
Um, but I know other people that like had irregular periods and they were put on the pill at like 13.
Yeah.
And
Yes. I went to an OBGYN also at
Mm.
like age, I don't know, 16. This was after I had not had a period for, it was like months. And my mom was
Wow.
concerned. And so we made an appointment. I went to her, she checked me out. Nothing was wrong.
Mhm.
She also, and I'm very grateful for this, but she didn't suggest hopping on the pill right away.
Yeah, that's good.
And I, that, yeah, very happy about that. But she sort of had no reason or rhyme for it. It was just like your body is doing its thing. It's probably getting itself together. The period will level out eventually and become a bit
Mm.
more regular, which honestly, it never really did. And
Yeah.
it's still like finally now I'm at a position where I feel like it is regular, but for so many years it wasn't. But I just find it so interesting that we are so quick to rush because I know we're not the only ones. People I know also went to the OBGYN like so young for periods that were not regular,
Yeah.
and like not really any symptoms either.
No. And I think my mom was concerned just because I was bleeding so much.
Mm-hmm.
There was questions of like, "Oh, are you anemic?" And I wasn't.
Okay.
Um, but I went to see the OBGYN that she sees. And so it's like, obviously OBGYNs like see a vast range of ages, but I almost felt like I don't want to see the doctor my mom sees.
Yeah.
Like that's icky. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's so interesting that you and your friends like did practice runs. So, when did you start after you had your first period? When did you start using tampons? Like how much
Ooh.
time passed?
So I know that it wasn't that long because again, remember I got it in like so we both got it in July, right? So it's
Mhm.
summertime. We had a
Yeah.
pool. And
Oh.
so like I really wanted to swim. I also took pool in for a semester in high school. So like ninth grade. I remember that was a thing. So I think it probably was that summer. It was not my first period, but it was probably when it was still warm enough out to swim. So that could be August or September or even October sometimes in New York,
Mhm.
depending. And so I know I did it because I really wanted to swim in the pool, and I felt like having the tampon was the only way to do that. And I also have a vivid memory of, do you remember like the Playtex Sport
Yes.
commercials? And they were like
Yes.
jumping around, doing backflips and things.
In
And
like all
yeah,
white.
yes, totally like no spills, no leakage. And
Yes, yes.
I kind of was a little obsessed with that idea and loved, I remember, using only that specific type of tampon. Clearly, the marketing worked. I bought
Mhm.
it, Playtex Sport, and then used it when I was swimming in my pool. And I remember pretending, sort of to myself or with my sister, that I was in the commercial and I was swimming around and like
Oh,
flipping around, and thought it was so fun. So it definitely was quite early on for me. And then, of course, I had to when we were required to take that class in school and learn how to swim, which was pretty awesome. I'm actually really happy we had that. Um, but yeah, and then from that point on, I mean, I don't even use tampons today because I sort of have shied away from them a bit.
mhm.
I recently started using the Thinx underwear.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not like super keen on tampons at the moment, but that will probably change.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to see, how a lot of people that menstruate kind of go through phases of
Hmm.
different products that they prefer. Like, I really, when I was in high school, I was like, I need to use a tampon. Like, I have to
Yeah.
use tampons. Because I got my first quote unquote period in like sixth or seventh grade, but I didn't
Hmm.
use a tampon until I was maybe a freshman or sophomore in high school.
Hmm.
Um, and it was really like, it felt like all my friends were using tampons. And so I was like, oh, well, everyone's using that. So I have to use them. So I used tampons like consistently, except if I was like sleeping, I would use a pad. But
Hmm.
otherwise, it was like only tampons throughout probably until I got to college
Yeah.
when I started taking contraception and then
Hmm.
wouldn't have a period. So it was like thinking back to how many tampons I probably used, it was probably a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's interesting now. Like I was so against pads growing up because I thought they were babyish. I was like,
Hmm.
oh God, like everyone's gonna see the pad, everyone's gonna know. And now as an adult, like as someone who's getting their period regularly,
Hmm.
I will sometimes use pads. And I'm like, I would
Yeah.
just rather use this.
Yep.
And so I think it's so funny, like how we kind of move through phases. But
Yeah.
like when you first used a tampon, were you like, were you like so freaked out, or were you just kind of like, this
Mm.
is easy, I got it?
Oh no. I remember, so we definitely used the applicator the ones
Mm,
with the plastic, and they were pretty colors, green, pink, blue, whatever. Um, it was an interesting experience. Again, I had like read through that Caring Keeping of You American Girl book millions of times, pored over the how to insert a tampon pages. So I felt fairly prepared.
mm,
Um, I don't remember the precise, I wish I did, but I don't remember the precise moment I like actually did the thing. But I do remember, putting it in, the first couple of times, and even to this day, if I put a tampon in, it doesn't always quite feel right
yeah.
immediately. So I remember, at first I would maybe put it in, it wouldn't really quite feel right. I would take it out. I would maybe try again a little bit later and put it in. And if it was still not really going my way, I would just say, forget it. We're not going to do that right
Mm,
now. But then I kind of got the hang of it. I didn't feel it was too hard for me to really wrap my brain around. But I also never like there was no one in the bathroom with me. Like no one ever, my mom like didn't
yeah.
come in with me and talk me through it. She wasn't even
Hmm.
really, I don't even know if she was aware of it. I think she kind of, poor woman, she kind of like did herself dirty with the whole like you're a woman now thing. And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
forget it. We're not talking about
Freaked you
periods.
out. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I definitely, it was okay, but I sort of feel like I figured it out on
Yeah.
my own. How were you alone the first time you did it? How did you feel?
Oh yeah. I think for the longest time growing up I was like embarrassed.
Hmm.
I guess maybe about having a period, but just like my body in general cuz
Hmm.
puberty and stuff, and so I was definitely alone. I think one of my friends gave me a tampon and was basically like, go ahead and go put it in. And I remember like not inserting it all the way, so it was like very uncomfortable. You
Oh
know that
yeah.
feeling
Oh
like
yeah.
when you don't put it in right. um I think that happened maybe a couple times, and then I like immediately took it out. But I remember in high school, there was one brand. I don't remember if you remember this, but it was a Kotex brand. And they
Hmm.
had, speaking of like period products, like marketing,
Marketing.
the ads were like um, kind of like what's what I'm like more edgy. The box was
Mm.
black. It wasn't like the rest of
Ooh.
them. And so it was like, we're the cool girls. And I was like, ooh, they're fun colors. Cause I didn't play sports. And so I was like, this is more like speaking to me.
Hmm.
But the way that it was is the applicator wasn't completely like visible or out. You had to like pull it and it would
Oh.
click into place. But I didn't know
Oh no.
for like months. And so I had this tiny little like half of the applicator really to work with. And I'm like shoving it and I like it's like coming out really like awkwardly. And I remember being in the bathroom and I'd asked someone for a tampon and they gave it to me and they were waiting for me because we were going to go to sit in the cafeteria together. And I was like, I'm struggling. I can't get it to work. And they're like, oh, you need to click it to get it, the applicator to be full size. And I was like, oh my God, I had no idea.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so I, do remember having moments where it was like inserted wrong
Hmm.
or just being uncomfortable. But um, yeah, I think that was really like my experience growing up. And
Yeah.
in thinking back to like period underwear, if you had had that growing up, do you think you would have used that?
Hell no. I
Really?
no, I don't think so. I mean, pads were, like you said, I don't know. I felt like there was kind of this weird energy around pad use or like stigma. Like you said, you almost exclusively use tampons. I certainly used pads at night. I remember that,
Yeah.
um, but as far as, being discreet, I think there was this value on being discreet about your period, not
Oh my
showing
God.
pads as
Mhm.
like quote unquote diapers, being for old
Yes.
ladies. So I definitely would not have been down to play with the period underwear. And it's so funny how things change and what you value as important now versus back then. And I will say for
Yeah.
now, I'm mostly, the period underwear is something I'll wear overnight.
Mhm.
Um, but I only have one pair. So it's like a process to wash it and then let it dry and hang and do the whole thing. So I don't
Mhm.
really, and I know they're only good for a certain number of washes. So I don't wear them all the time,
Yeah.
but I will say it's kind of nice to it sort of jives with my desire to be a little less environmentally, have a little bit less of a footprint with
Yeah.
all the wrappers that I see in the garbage of pads. And so I'm constantly trying to think about ways to lower that impact. But, a lot of my good friends use menstrual cups and I just haven't
Mhm.
ordered mine yet and
Oh,
have
so you haven't used one at
I've
all?
never used one and I
Oh my
want
gosh.
to. How do
Mhm.
you have you used one? What do you
Yes, I
think?
have one. So I
Okay.
have the Lena cup.
Okay.
Um, it works really well.
Okay.
Um, there is some like maintenance that you do have to do.
Yeah.
Like you do have to make sure that you're cleaning it well. Um, and yeah, basically like make sure you're cleaning it well.
Yeah.
Um, I do remember inserting that for the first time, and that was interesting.
Yeah.
So, like, basically, how the cup is like you fold it to
Mhm.
insert it, and then it's supposed to pop open. But but I was like, well, how do I know it's open?
Yeah.
Like I thought maybe it was still like folded inside of me. And
Uh,
so I put it in no problem. And then I was like, well, I don't know that it's popped open. So then I tried to remove it and my body was like, hold on, you just put this thing in, like you can't take it out right away. And
oh.
so I kind of clammed up a little bit. So that was not a fun time. Um,
Yeah.
but honestly, like I think even now, sometimes when I use it, like when I first put it in, I do kind of feel like a little bit of discomfort, but it's not like it's very manageable and it goes away pretty quickly. Like I just kind of either it goes away or I just forget about it.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm good for like the rest of the day. So I
Oh.
really go back and forth between using my menstrual cup and then using um period underwear.
Mhm.
And like I do have pads that are like chlorine free.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of ingredients in our menstrual products that we don't know
Mhm.
about. And so I'm like, you say that you're chlorine free, I will take your word for it
Yeah.
and use that. But I honestly rarely really use that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but I thinking about how I was growing up around my period, like I don't think I would have been ready for a menstrual cup. I don't think I
Right.
would have used the period underwear either.
Mhm.
And like your comment about being discreet, I very much remember that. Like, if you needed a tampon from a friend, it was like, okay, quickly put it up your sleeve, quickly put it in your backpack.
Yeah.
Like, don't. And I think part of that is like you're growing up, so you're already so uncomfortable
Mhm.
anyway. But it's also like we don't want to talk about periods because,
Always.
oh, maybe like some of the boys will see it, or maybe the teacher will see it, and that'll be awkward.
Right.
Um, so, in thinking about that, like I really only talked about my period with other girlfriends.
Mhm.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
and even then it wasn't like it was more like complaining about it. It was like, oh my gosh, like when I have cramps, this I feel like this. Oh, kind
Mhm.
of, complaining about the experience. So I don't know if you have a similar experience to that.
Yeah, I remember it was a very much only girl conversation, like only the girlfriends and I would chat about it, but it was never, I mean, I don't know how often it was in a positive light now that you sort of mention it, and it was a little bit more whiny. I remember having pretty bad, my main symptom was like lower back pain. And
Mhm.
so that was, I remember it being really quite unmanageable at times, but never, missed school or anything over it, but it was not super comfy. Um, and I even remember like hiding it from my dad, like not wanting
Mhm.
to involve him. I mean, I think the kind of relationship we have also, we don't really talk about stuff like that is super personal. And that was certainly one thing that was. And I also did not want to be viewed as this goes along with the whole stigma of like talking about menstruation, and heaven forbid we bring up the word period or like show a tampon out in the open. um, but like, we just didn't, I didn't want to be viewed as compromised. And I think there
Mm.
is this very real fear of, you know, and history behind emotional hysteria and being over emotional and hormonal and PMSing and not being able to think clearly or make decisions. And, this idea or image of sitting in bed all day with a heat pack on, like eating bars of chocolate. And that is not, I mean, sometimes that's a reality and it's all good,
Yeah,
but that is
yeah.
not always how it is. So
Mhm.
I think that was part of the desire to hide and be quite private about it, because I didn't want people to make assumptions about me or have misperceptions.
Mhm. No, I totally like, and I also grew up with younger brothers, and so
Oh, yeah.
it was very much like it wasn't really like a spoken rule that we had, but it was very much like we don't really talk about this. But I remember, we had a family dog that loved to dig around in the trash, and
Oh,
so she would
no.
find used tampons and carry them around the house and try to eat them, which is gross. But then she would like leave the tampon like in the middle of the floor. And so it was like the only time I feel like the men in my family were exposed to periods was when they found a used tampon on the floor. And so it's
Oh.
like that. And, thinking about it, like, I don't think my parents ever really had a period talk with really with any of us. In thinking about it, it was like, if I asked my mom a question, she would answer it, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like, okay, here are the things that are going to change, and like any real sit down conversation about it.
Mhm.
Now, because you grew up with a sister,
Yeah.
did you all like talk about periods at all, or was it kind of like your own experience?
It's so funny. So I was talking to my sister yesterday, and I brought up that this was going to be our topic for tonight's discussion. And so we started talking about it then, but we realized that it was a very weird disconnect. I think um, I don't remember a lot of conversations with her about it. We were very close, but we got close really later on. I would say later on in high school and in college, not really when we were period age, the ages we got our periods. So, but similarly, I don't remember having a sit down conversation with my mother or father or anyone for that matter. Um, Certainly not with my sister involved. And it, I do remember a little bit of discussion of periods in school. I remember watching this video in class in like elementary school. Um, and they took all the boys into a different room. I don't know what they did.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did that with us too.
Right. How weird was that? Anyway, so I remember this distinct video. I'm sure someone listening knows what this is, but the mom in the video made pancakes in the shape of like a uterus and ovaries and was explaining the process of periods to her daughter who had woken up from her sleep and realized she had her period. She had a friend over, it was a sleepover, and the mom sort of schooled them on periods. And I was like, yeah, that is not what happened in my house.
No.
Yeah, so like unrealistic expectations. That was also long before I had my period. It was definitely like fourth
Mm-hmm.
grade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, as far as, I think I held those books so closely, those like period learning books because,
Mhm.
and they talked about other topics about aging too, like growing, up puberty,
Yeah.
because I didn't really feel super comfortable talking to even my parents, definitely not my dad, but my mom even about these things. Certainly, she would share if I asked a question, much like your mom, but it wasn't like a bonding experience. There was nothing like really big about it. So I would say school was really the only place where I heard anything. And it certainly wasn't received very well, nor at the appropriate time. So
Mhm.
fell flat.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah, that's really interesting. I am just kind of thinking about different interactions that I've had, while growing up about periods and thinking about, you know, I don't know that a lot of people have that conversation with their parents, and if they
Yeah.
do, I'm curious about what that looks like. But we had a similar thing growing up of the boys and the girls got separated, and I think we were in elementary school and also in middle school, um, and we had kind of those moments of like, this is what a pad is.
Hmm.
You know, I don't remember a video about the reproductive system. That actually would have been really helpful. I don't even remember learning about that at all. I
Yeah.
may have just, blocked that out because I was too embarrassed. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, so, you know, now kind of looking back over your experience, is there anything that I mean, obviously hindsight is 2020, but is
Yeah.
there anything that you wish would have been different or wish that you had done differently?
Mm. I think it's, I mean, I think there's always something we can come up with when we look back at these experiences, knowing what we know now, especially being so passionate about these topics. I think I would have just liked to somehow feel a little bit more of a community, around periods. I know my friends had it, but it didn't have this sense of like, I'm not alone, we're in this together. um Totally natural, normal thing, let's talk about it. And I think now, because I'm so into the concept of talking about our feelings, talking about things especially like this, and community, and building social support, I think that's something I wish would have been different about my experience. I think I probably knew as much as I would have been happy to know at that age, doing like the little reading research I did, but having that sense of belonging would have been
Mm.
something that that I'd hope for my kids in the future if they menstruate. So um, yeah. What about you? What do you think you would have liked to have at that age?
I think I would have, you know, wanted to know that, like, I think in some regards, I was a bit of a late bloomer.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of did a lot of things after all of my friends did, um, which at the time felt like an issue, but looking back, it's like it doesn't really matter.
No.
So I think I would have just, you know, told myself that like I don't have to use tampons yet. There is no need to,
Hmm.
use a certain type of product. And I think I agree on the community. Friends we would talk about it together, but it wasn't. It has a different tone talking about it now as an adult than it did as a kid. And
Sure.
I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but there is definitely more, it feels like more of a community building discussion than this shared, inconvenience that we all have, right?
Right.
Um, and yeah, I think that's how I would have, managed that. And I think, the more that we're talking about it, the more I do realize like there is also a lot of like privilege in these experiences. Like,
Yeah.
in the culture and the country that we live in, like we we were able to have access to um different types of products, and we were able to
Hmm.
kind of choose in a sense what products we wanted. um and that didn't really get in the way of our daily life.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, I do think that the way that we view menstruation does kind of, when we're younger, kind of does inform how we feel about it in the future. Like for
Yeah.
a long time, I just kind of felt ambivalent about it. Um, I never really felt strongly about menstruation, I think really until the past couple of years. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, actually, this is a kind of cool thing that my body naturally does. And so let's kind of follow it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
So, and
Embrace it.
yeah, and so in thinking about your experience as a kid, moving into an adult, and having kind of an irregular period, do how did that kind of shape your views of menstruation, e- even
Mm,
today, if at
yeah.
all?
I think, you know, I feel like I didn't really appreciate it for what it actually is at all until very recently. Kind of like you, I got really into this topic, really into menstrual health a few years ago. Um, and it's freaking awesome. Like it is a beautiful, incredible thing that our bodies do. Um, Sometimes there's discomfort that goes along with it, but overall, it's fantastically human. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that. I think you know, as a kid, never ever once appreciated it for what it was, because that's
No.
just not how our world is and was. And that definitely stuck with me. I mean, the taboo nature of it, the stigma, the not wanting to talk about it, the wanting to hide it, um, that shaped my entire experience around periods and menstruation throughout most of my adult life up until this point, um, save for like the last few years. So I feel very lucky, that I've gotten the chance uh, to rethink and to sort of dive deeper into these topics because I am so much happier now with my period and understanding the inherent beauty of this. I also, as part of my long, complicated history of irregular periods, lost it for a number of years.
Hmm.
And finally getting it back last October was like this epic thing. So I feel like I'm still riding that high of, oh my God, it's here, it's regular. I am so beyond thrilled. And again, there's a ton of privilege that goes along with the ability to look at this as, such a positive thing to be completely comfortable knowing that I have the products I need, I have the resources I need, I feel supported now. Um, and yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful, still very much happy about where I'm at with that. Um,
I think there's
yeah.
also, we've talked about this, there's also a privilege in having a regular period,
Yes.
um, for a variety of reasons, but like even just for comfort and like, like routine, like it's
Yep.
happening to your body usually within the same time every month. It's coming, you
Right.
can kind of plan around it. And, if you have an irregular period, you don't really have that sense. And obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but there can also feel like a disconnect from what's going on with your body sometimes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I think, you know, that is now something menstruation now is something I consider to be a vital sign. And I never thought of it that way before. But if you're not menstruating and you are regularly menstruating, usually, it's definitely a sign that something's up that you might want to pay attention to. And I ignored it for so long as oh, well, don't got to deal with that. No problem whatsoever, but I knew that something was wrong. And when I finally addressed that, which I'm sure we'll get into in a future episode, I was lucky enough to get it back and realize, yep, that is 100% vital vital sign. Here it is. We're good to go. Because again, reproduction, like menstruation, is tied to all of our reproductive system.
Mhm.
And if we're not menstruating, reproduction is not essential to life. And if you need to shunt energy to other bodily processes, you'll do it, and you'll conserve that energy and not spend it on menstruation. So that's certainly what was happening for me, and I feel very lucky to be where I am now,
Yeah.
menstruating human.
Yeah. No, I completely, I can understand that. And um I think something else that a lot of people experience that we talked about a little bit earlier is um obviously the role of contraception, which, we'll dive deep into in another
Mm-hmm.
episode, but um how that can really disrupt that your
Mm-hmm.
menstruation, obviously physically, but also just your connection to that process.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
as someone that was had different forms of contraception throughout college and up until a couple years ago, I think that also kind of fed into like my ambivalence about it, because I was like, well, I don't experience a period.
Mm-hmm.
um so I don't really feel any strong feelings about it because I just don't have it.
Yeah.
um Obviously I don't have it for a different reason that you didn't have it, but I
Yeah.
can understand that disconnect and almost that ambivalence.
Yeah. I'm excited for talking about more about contraception and diving deep there, because I think, you and I have very different experiences in that realm. For our listeners, I've never used any form of like hormonal contraception, IUD, patch, pill, like anything. And not that I'm opposed to it at all by any means, but it's just never been the right choice for me at the right time. So we have very different experiences in that realm, and I think it'll be really fun to get into a discussion around those topics. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, it makes me a little weirdly nostalgic to think about my,
Hmm.
growing up and my experiences. And, I think there are things that I wish were different, but if I think about it too much, I'm like, well, it kind of led me to my feelings about it now.
Yep.
Um, and so I wouldn't take that back.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that, it took us both a while to get there.
Yep. 27 years.
But, I think, yeah, we're both feeling way more positive about it now. Do we want to talk about our periods, like how they are now?
Yeah, let's do it. I let's see here. So my period is super regular. I've actually been tracking on the just normal health app that comes on iPhone. Has a cycle tracking feature, free, easy peasy, love it. Um, and they've been consistently for the past couple of months, like 24 days apart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
So like almost every cycle is 24 days.
Almost every cycle is
Oh my
24
gosh.
days. Yep. It'll
Wow.
predict your period, your likely period days. It'll predict your fertile window, things like that, which I find really interesting. So, and you just sort of go in, you put whether you had flow or no flow, whether it was light, medium,
Mhm.
heavy. So I like it. It's easy to use and quick, um, and a great way to remember, because otherwise I'm not going to remember. And honestly, I've never, so far in this new having a period thing since October, it has not been fairly um, heavy or uncomfortable by any means whatsoever. I think I've had a couple of like symptoms that were newer to me, like breast tenderness
Mm.
sometimes, not every
Mhm.
time. And if only for, a couple of days at the beginning of my cycle. But yeah, it's been kind of a really low key, regular period situation, which is highly new for me, and I'm enjoying the
Yeah.
novelty of it. It's
Mhm.
also I live with four other, no, three other. There's four total menstruators in my home, And all of us are, so I've heard this is sort of a myth, but I really take issue with that because I feel like it happens every house I live in with other menstruators. We're all sort of synced up, which is kind of beautiful. Like within a couple days of each other, it is weird. But I kind of really enjoy it too because I know what's going on, and it's that community that I was searching for as a kid and like wished I had, looking back. So I kind of get to enjoy that now, which I think is really fun. um
Yeah.
yeah, what, Grace, how are you doing now with period
Mine are
regularity?
mine are also regular. So I came off the pill, I think either the same time that you started to get your period or a
Yeah,
month after. It
very
was very
close.
it was very close together.
Yep.
But I had been on the pill for about a year and a half. And I think the summer before, I just started having like spotting just
Yeah.
randomly. And my OBGYN was saying, nothing looks wrong. It could just be the pill. It could be your body just saying they don't like this pill anymore. Let's switch you over to a new one. I switched over to a new one and I was on it for a couple months and I was like, I don't think that this is really working for me. I've been on different forms of birth control for years now, and I just feel like maybe it's time to just try without. So I came off birth control, and then I was tracking my period and my basal body temperature um, pretty consistently through the Flow app.
Mm-hmm.
So that one you do have to pay for, but I would just take my temperature in the morning and just track that. But as I've regularly had periods, I actually don't really track that anymore because I can tell by my body's natural symptoms if I'm ovulating or if I'm about to get my period.
Yeah.
My cycles are anywhere between 24 and 28 days, which
Mm-hmm.
is normal. It kind of falls in that normal range.
Yeah.
So I don't always get my period like on the same day. But it's usually around like the first of the month. And it's funny you mentioned about your roommates because um for listeners, I'm a birth doula,
Yeah.
and my most recent client went into labor and gave birth on the 1st of May. And I have heard from other doulas that, you know, a lot of oxytocin running through that pregnant person's body. It kind of fills the room and can mess with your menstrual cycle. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm not even kidding. I got home from the hospital at like 2 a.m. Next morning, I had my period.
Oh my
Next
gosh.
morning. And so I was like, okay, maybe there is something to that. Yeah, but otherwise my period is very regular.
Hmm.
I don't really have too many symptoms.
Hmm.
I'd say maybe once out of however many months I've been off the pill, so like 7 months or so,
Yeah.
um, I've had cramps. Um, I do get some like hormonal acne, but otherwise everything's pretty manageable. Um, and it makes me think back to growing up. I remember having like cramps all the time and just being
Hmm.
miserable. And now I'm like, I maybe have low energy the day before.
Yeah.
Um, but otherwise, like not not much to complain about.
I feel like we're pretty lucky.
Yes,
We're doing pretty
very
great.
lucky. Very lucky. Um, yeah, I know a lot of people that do not have that experience.
Yeah. And Grace and
Yeah.
I remember like initially during these months, because we were very close in, so Grace going off the pill and me getting my period for the first time and being like, is it going to come back again? Is it going to come back again? And every time just being thrilled. But talking about our like cervical mucus and the different things we were
Yes.
seeing and the being hot a little bit. I remember both of us were feeling that for a while.
I was like,
Um,
so I can't even tell you, like, I remember just sitting here and I was like, I'm so sweaty. Like,
hot
I'm just
flash.
sitting here. Yes. And I was like, so it's interesting to have symptoms that we'd never had before.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's, bodies change and grow and develop, and we're at the place in our lives now where these are the symptoms we're feeling. And I'm interested to see how this evolves over the next couple of decades, I suppose, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole nother topic of
I know.
perimenopause and menopause.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, but I think, is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about?
I think this was pretty solid. I mean, we kind of ran through some really nostalgic memories. Thanks everyone for bearing with us through those and joining us on that journey. We'd love to hear from listeners what their experiences were, what they felt
Yeah.
were, some of their learnings.
Yeah, and how, looking at maybe your first period experience compared to now, what that kind of looks like. So we're always happy to hear that. A little plug before we kind of wrap up is, we mentioned a couple other topics that we are going to be talking about in the future, one of them being contraception. I'm blanking on the other ones, but
We definitely,
contraception.
like we said some stuff in here.
We
Anything
said some stuff.
related to menstrual health, wellness,
Mm-hmm.
anything else on our little blurb, diet culture, um, menstrual products,
Mm-hmm.
anything, we'll take it.
Yeah. So, if anything we discussed today rang particularly true for you, or if you have anything you'd like to share about your own first period, like we said, feel free to write us at theflowup@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And, remember, don't forget to send in your questions. Where we have a list of things that we want to talk about, but we want to hear from you all, and see if there's anything else you want us to talk about.
Yes, please. We look forward to hearing that. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, which we're at now, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit us up on Instagram. We're at the Flow Up Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Flow Up Podcast. And we are working on getting our Patreon up and running. So please stay tuned for more information there. Our email for questions, comments, and ideas for future episode topics is again theflowup@gmail.com. So please send those in to us. We look forward to hearing from you. And thanks so much for joining us today.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.